Of all the questions we get about XCM moves, you wouldn't believe that the majority of them have to do with how to fan. How to fan smooth, how to fan nice. Well, now we're going to teach you the secrets of fanning. So sit back, pay attention, and you will fan like the Flourish Man. Through extensive research, we have discovered that most fanning problems stem from two sources. These sources are deck condition and starting grip. Believe it or not, almost all your problems with fanning can be solved by paying attention to these two elements. So, we're going to tell you how to deal with deck condition, how to obtain the optimal condition for a deck for fanning, and we're going to give you all the tips on where to put your fingers at the very outset of each fan. We're also going to tell you how to do the fans, but those two things are the most important, and I guarantee you that if you have a nice deck that's been tuned for fanning, and if your fingers are in the correct position to start, you're going to have a good time. Do your fans look like this? Maybe it's because of deck condition. How can you expect a hideous, filthy deck to fan well? Well, the answer is you can't. What you need is a nice, new, but broken in, and perhaps well powdered deck. We're going to teach you how to discern whether or not a deck is perfect for fanning. And believe it or not, there's some quick little tests you can do while the deck's in the hand anytime you pick up a deck. And you'll be able to know in just a few seconds whether or not this is a deck you want to fan, or if you want to put it where this deck belongs, which is in the disposal. Now, this deck, as you can see, fans really nice. It's been tuned for the occasion. What makes it fannable? What's different about this deck than the deck that Grandma uses to play cards with? Well, it's got fanning powder. It's relatively new. There aren't any crimps or bends or significant amounts of oil on it. One thing I do whenever I pick up a deck is I give it a pressure fan real quick, and that in itself tells me a lot about the condition of the deck. Another thing I do is I'll kind of bevel the deck and see how well it fans, just like you were trying to fan it, with two hands without any technique at all. You can kind of feel the whole deck this way, and it'll again tell you a lot about the deck. Ribbon spreading the deck or arm spreading the deck will show you the condition of the deck. If it's nice and even without big clumps of cards or breaks, it's a good deck. Now contrast that with this horrifying deck, and you can see that it's got breaks, gaps, actual chunks of feces. So this is not a good deck to fan at all, because it's in horrible shape. Were I to do the pressure fan test of pressure fanning, again, you find lots of gaps, and it's just not a very attractive fan. So one way is to fan the cards, the other way is to bevel the cards, and the other way is to spread the cards and see how they spread. You can tell a lot about the deck just the way it sits in your hand. If it bevels on its own like that, that's good for fanning. It's got some adhesion to it. See how nicely it bevels? If it's easy to bevel and spread with one hand, regardless of what fanning method you're using, that's another great sign. If it just tends to act as a unit. Because that's really what fanning is. Fanning is beveling the deck, but beveling it in a circle. And the more you learn to treat the deck as this one big beveled tool, the better you're going to be able to fan, and that's a great sign of a deck that's ready to fan. it spreads, it bevels, it feels smooth, it almost fans itself. And a deck like that is going to be a lot easier to fan using the methods that we've shown you. In the Q Week 1 section, we showed you how to apply fanning powder, and I suggest you consult that section. It'll make your life a lot easier when it comes time to do fanning. A problem you may encounter is if you do repeated fans with the same card on the face, or if you do a lot of moves and that card doesn't come off the face, is you might get a gap caused by oil on the cards. To solve that, you simply cut the deck. Rather than fanning it many times with the same face card, just make sure that you occasionally cut the deck. So if I'm doing a routine that has like 5 quick fans in a row, I'll try to at some point give the deck a cut or remove that face card so it doesn't get overly oiled. You don't want that to happen. Fanning powder, I'm telling you, some people don't use it, but just look at the way this deck behaves. A new deck doesn't behave like this, trust me. I've been using decks of cards for 25 years. I've done it with fanning powder, I've done it without fanning powder. Fanning powder's a good thing, I'm telling you. First fan we're going to go over is the basic thumb fan. Looks easy. A lot of people still have trouble with it. It's been taught in many sources, but what they don't do is they don't remind you the rule of parallel, which is going to obtain and apply in many different situations with fanning. For the thumb fan, the short end must be parallel with the fingers, just like this. Now, if I start and do a thumb fan from this position, I'm going to get a nice thumb fan. It's not going to be as wide as we'd like. So there's going to be one little other subtlety we're going to do. Remember to always start out with the thumb parallel to the fingers and the short end parallel to the thumb and fingers. They're all in one straight line. Now to make a bigger fan, to get that last little few inches of fan, you're going to cock the deck right like that. Now it's no longer parallel, and you might ask, well, why don't you start out by putting the deck like that? That's a tough position to just stumble on, so you're better off starting with the deck parallel and then simply cocking it. So here's another view of how it's going to look from the back. The deck is going to cock over like that. No other fingers are going to move. The thumb is still going to remain exactly parallel with the fingers. In real time, you cock and then you fan. So that gives you a wider fan. But it's essential with this and all fans, even one-handed fans, although the fingers might be parallel to another side, that in every instance when you fan, this is going to pertain. There's going to be an edge and there's going to be a finger parallel to it. Very important. Now that we've got the starting positions down with the parallel, the angling of the deck so that we get that extra bit of fan, the actual mechanics of the fan involve beveling the deck. And it's not a process of beveling, just a few cards at a time and dropping them like that. You can do a fan like that, but this is what will tend to happen. You'll get a weak fan at the beginning and a lot of leftover wasted cards at the end. So you don't want that to happen. So ideally, when you're thumb fanning, you bevel the entire deck as a unit. See how that happens? The whole deck is beveled from back to front at the very start of the fan. And all this does is gets the last cards fanning as the beginning cards are being fanned. And so instead of having it happen like this, where you really, you have to kind of count the cards in order to get a smooth fan, this automatically kind of meters them out. It measures them for you. And the other thing about thinking about a beveled deck like that is that the whole deck tends to fan more smoothly as it moves against itself. So, in other words, I'm not really fanning the lower cards with my thumb so much as I'm fanning them with the pressure of the rest of the deck. So I initially start out by laying them out, but when I'm here, I'm pressing down on my thumb. These cards aren't completely spread out yet, but they're going to continue to spread owing to the pressure of my thumb. And so that's that beveling action again. The beveling starts and continues all the way through the fan. So fanning is beveling the deck in an arc. But how do you get that nice round arc? Well, apparently it's being caused by my right thumb rotating around the cards, which are kind of anchored by the left thumb, which is an axis around which the other cards rotate. So it looks like happening, but if you isolate the action, you'll find that it'll be easier for you to get an arc if you keep that right thumb absolutely stationary. Now, the reason this is easier to make an arc is that you have some place to, some point of reference, really. So here's what I'm doing. I'm keeping my right thumb perfectly still, and I'm rotating my left hand in a round arc. And what this will teach you to do is eventually, no matter how you're fanning the deck, you can use your elbow or your nose or what have you. Your left hand is really going to be the kind of driver or the leader of the motion of the fan. So watch how hard it is for me to keep my left hand perfectly straight and make a fan. And it feels hard for me, and it's an unnatural motion. So I guess what I'm trying to convey to you is that arc is brought about really by the motion of both hands. And to get the motion of the left hand, try learning to fan by keeping your right thumb absolutely stationary and making the fan completely with the left hand motion alone. You won't be doing that in real life, but you won't be doing this either. It's not the way it works. In reality, there's going to be kind of a blend so that one hand is moving one way, the other hand is moving the other way. But without this this concept here, I think that you're gonna have some problems. You're gonna have fans that are either too square and wide, or I see this happen a lot where the fans are real small. Bet you it'll be solved if you just try this little trick. There's a final little subtlety on the presentation of fans. And you may not have really noticed it, but when I completed my fan, I made a slight adjustment there. And there's several adjustments like that you can make. So here's where I'm ostensibly done with the fan. But then what I did was I drew toward my wrist with my thumb to get a little bit of extra, see that? Of extra spread on that. You can do the same thing with the fingers on the other side. So it'll be like this. You pull down, or actually you pull toward your wrist with your index finger, and it makes the fan just a little bit larger. And what you tend to find yourself doing is you make a fan, you examine it real quick, and you make the adjustment. Like I saw that fan was a little bit tight there, so I drew back with my left index finger. I drew it toward my wrist. So there I went like that. If I find that the fan is a little bit tight up there, I'll do that. So I pulled back with my thumb. And you'll often find yourself kind of just automatically doing a little of both to get just a little bit more of the spread so that all the indices are visible. And it's a good habit to get into, and it's been suggested in different books. It's easier if you're holding the fan up like this because gravity will have a little bit of the effect of letting the fan spread a little bit more. So you just kind of loosen up your grip and it'll cause it to spread. But even a fan in this position can be aided and made a little bit rounder and a little bit wider by either pulling back with your index finger or with your thumb. Just gives you a little extra edge on the fans there. And you'll find that most people, since they don't do the angling action, they start off like this, and they don't do any adjustments after the fan, will be making these, nice fans, but you don't have the large amount of coverage and wideness and beauty of a fan that's got all the extras. Now the same things about parallel is going to apply to a pressure fan as well. So we had it like this for the thumb fan, we cocked it, we made our thumb fan. We're going to do the same things for a pressure fan, but we're going to use the pressure fanning method. Parallel, cock, but this time we're going to put the deck using our fingers rather than doing it this way, because we want to be in position to do a pressure fan. And then we're going to make our pressure fan. So the reason we do this is to have the perfect positioning for the deck. Everything's nice and parallel, the thumb's not going to move when the deck is cocked, but cocking that deck before we start to fan gives us that much extra fan, and that's what looks cool. Why is the pressure fan the best way to fan a deck of cards? Well, every time you spread or bevel and spread, the more pressure you exert up to a reasonable point, the more even the spreading is going to be. And to verify this, just try doing a thumb fan with hardly any pressure at all. So you can do all the correct things as far as deck positioning and moving the deck over. But now just kind of thumb fan the deck and try to put very, very little pressure as you thumb fan the deck. And what you're going to find is you're kind of at the mercy of how the deck just will bevel and spread on its own. The more pressure you put on a thumb fan, the better off you're going to be, because the cards bevel and spread all at once rather than being deposited. The pressure fan allows you to exert the maximum amount of pressure, and it gives you a bonus of bending the cards back like that. And what that does really is cause all the surfaces that are touching of all the cards to press together at once. And it's the most even action of spreading you're going to get. Applying very light pressure with a thumb fan, the cards aren't being pressed together and they're not contacting, so there's actual minute gaps, and that's what causes the uneven spreading. But so what I'm going to do when I pressure fan is I'm going to put lots of pressure on. Now there's no air between the cards, there's no gaps. All the cards are pressing against one another. And if you've ever slid a card against a piece of glass, there's a point at which it will adhere because all the surface of the card is pressed up against the glass. You're having the same thing occur with a pressure fan. So I'm applying even, uniform pressure to the deck. I'm not applying a lot of pressure up here. I'm not applying a lot of pressure in any one place. And that's one of the reasons why the thumb is very important in the pressure fan as well. If you were to take a deck and try to pressure fan it just with the fingers like this, you'd have a tough time. And I'm not trying to screw it up on purpose. I'm trying to do the best pressure fan I can without using my thumb. But now with my thumb, it's like using the corner deck for springing the cards. The deck is all in control. It's all boxed in. And you're not going to use the corner deck for doing the pressure fan, but the point is there's a big difference. Even though we can do nice thumb fans, and the more pressure we put on the deck, the better for our thumb fans, there's substantially more pressure and just more control of the deck. And you're certainly going to find that it's true with a borrowed deck or a deck that's not in perfect condition, that a pressure fan will give you a nice even fan, more so than a thumb fan every time. So the key points we've been talking about is the idea of getting all the cards to press against one another rather than some portion of the deck. And if you want to verify that, again, go through the little experiments I've given you about just giving light pressure on a thumb fan, and you'll see that as you increase the pressure of your thumb fan and as you approach the pressure of a pressure fan, the fans become more even and more easy to control. Remember that thumb back there. Without that, it's going to be very, very tough. Now that's not to say that you do this. I've seen some people take it too seriously where they're trying to make the cards feed off the thumb or what have you. No, just do your regular pressure fan, but make sure that the short end of the deck that's closest to you is under control with the thumb. So there it is. I don't know if I can give you a good angle on that. You can certainly see it in the teaching sections, but without that thumb back there, you're going to lose a lot of control. So here's a couple ways to close the nice even fan you've made. That's it in slow motion. Another one has been around for many, many years. It's the one-hand close. And I'm showing it to you from the side it should be exhibited. The action happens on the other side. And you don't want to show that to the audience because it kind of spoils the effect of the fan instantly closing. But what you're going to do is you're going to start pushing up with the index finger and pulling down with the other three fingers. So that's what you're looking for. And one way I teach people is if they can do that one-hand fan we were just going over, just do the reverse for the two-hand fan, and vice versa. If you can already do the one-hand close, try working that to get a one-handed fan as well. It won't be perfect, but if you're having trouble, that'll kind of get you oriented and get the fanning happening. So your one-hand fan should be instant, just like that. If you have trouble, there's a bunch of things you can do. You can tilt the hand toward the way the fan closes, and that means gravity will help the fan close. See how I tilt it? Now it looks a little different from the other side. And that's one reason I'm holding the fan like this too, because it's closing with gravity. It'd be much harder to do that, although not impossible if the fan was the other way. Again, from the reverse side, which is where all the action takes place, the index finger is going to start pushing up on this very back card. All the other fingers pull down. And if you want to, you can learn it by walking the fingers like that. If you're not getting enough of the motion initiated, you can walk them, but pretty soon it'll be just this one motion. And if you want to use gravity to help, that's fine. Just kind of throw the deck or the fan that way as you close it. And that's your one-hand close. Now let's tackle a couple of one-handed fans. Again, the thumb should be parallel to the short end of the deck. Now here the fingers aren't so much parallel, but you could see the striking resemblance. This is our two-handed fan position. This is our one-handed fan position. Very important. Now this particular one-handed fan is the one you're going to use for twin fans. So normally you're going to be using it for just half the deck, but you can still do it like that with a full deck. Just make sure you do it nice and even. Now how do you do twin fans? It's a nice little effect. It's got two one-handed fans. It kind of looks like you're shuffling them together. Well, you're going to do it with the initial one-hand fan. Separate the deck kind of like you were shuffling a deck. This is the way a lot of people separate the deck to shuffle. So do that, get to your parallel position, then you're going to put this packet, this half, and you're going to clamp it temporarily. Now this is going to enable you to get to parallel position with your right hand. Very important trick. A lot of times you'll see guys just fumble around trying to, it's like, how do you get there? Well, this is a quick, easy way to get to your twin fan position. Very important. My thumbs are parallel to the short ends of the deck. This enables me to get nice round twin fans. Now, as far as the mechanics itself, other than the starting position, remember that beveling I was telling you about with the other fans. The same thing happens with these twin fans. Right when I start to fan, there's a beveling. And that is continued with the motion of the fingers, because it's really the fingers that open up the fans. So let's try it from the finger side. And all one-hand fans really are is just an extended beveling of the deck or half the deck. Very important. I see guys that try to kind of push the cards off the bottom only, and that causes this kind of fan, where it's heavy here, light there. But when you get the beveling going, it's almost like the whole half or deck fans at once as a unit. And you'll find this to be true of pressure fans too. A pressure fan isn't really depositing the cards one by one. It's actually a whole deck type action, where the deck is beveled and fanned all in one motion. So that's a good way to think about it. It's just simply fanning is beveling the deck, but in an arc. And if you have those starting positions down, if you've got a nice deck, you'll do okay. Here's how to do a perfect one-handed fan in the left hand. We're going to start with our grip. Our left thumb is parallel to the short end. Now, I'm going to apply even pressure with the fingers and the thumb at the same time. And to get the roundness, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of this part of my thumb in this corner as the axis, and that's where the cards are being drawn around that thumb. And my fingers are doing most of the work, although my thumb does draw toward me. the fingers opening up from that side and the thumb drawing back to some extent from the other side. But it's the thumb that forms the axis. The fan isn't rotating around any of these fingers. See how they all move? But even though the thumb is moving some, that part of the thumb really kind of stays stationary. And that's where the fan is formed around. Now for twin fans, lucky you'll only be using half a deck, and this makes a world of difference. It's a lot easier to spread half a deck in a one-handed fan than it is to spread the whole deck. I already taught you how to divide and close the twin fans. The formation of the fan itself is a matter of having that perfect starting position. Of course, the deck is in great condition. And applying pressure, moving the fingers one way, the thumb the other, and using the thumb as the axis. And one thing you'll discover when you learn the one-hand close like that is that you can reverse the motion if you're having trouble with these one-hand fans. Let's say you can do a regular one-hand close like that, but you can't do a one-hand fan. Well, try to first get your starting position like that, maybe open up a fan with two hands and then try to close it with one hand, or reverse the motion. So you've got your one-hand close and then try to backtrack on that to see if it'll help you out on making the fan. Most of all, starting position, deck condition, things will go your way. Twin fans, very nice. To close, you're going to pretend like you're shuffling them together, but you're really closing this one in front of this one. And watch how the right-hand fan closes against the left palm, as does the left-hand fan. To close those twin fans, you're taking the right-hand fan and closing it in to the left hand. Makes it look like a nice shuffle. Another way to present the shuffle, if you're at a table, is to use the table to square the cards against. So let's say you had a table, you would just square them against the table rather than the hand. Now let's apply what we've learned about starting position and deck condition to the beautiful giant fan. Very nice. A nice big even fan. Now to do a giant fan, you're going to have to weave the cards. And this is again where most people have problems, is the starting position. It's going to be the same as if you're going to make a pressure fan. But you've got some leeway because you're going to divide and weave the deck. But essentially, that'll work. Now, I'm going to put my index finger on the back of the deck, and that's going to keep the top of the deck square. I'm going to take a little less than half off the bottom, and I'm going to weave the cards. Notice how the cards have never changed position in my left hand. They're always like that. Saves a lot of time, a lot of extraneous motion, and that's a giveaway of an amateur fanning, is if they're doing a lot of stuff before the fan. A good fan just happens. It just kind of appears, even a giant fan. And the way you ensure that, start off. I did move my thumb a little there, and I think that'll be obvious to you when you have to do the weave. It's kind of impossible to do the weave, but what I want you to think about is, once you weave the cards, you're going to do the fan. So why have the cards in any other position other than ready to fan? Now I do make that little adjustment. So I go from here for pressure fanning to here for the giant fan. Not a big adjustment. And essentially the cards are ready to fan. A little less than half. You want top card and bottom card on the top half. And what if that doesn't happen, by the way? I'll show you, but that's what you try to achieve, and that's why this half is a little smaller But let's try to have that happen where a card comes, there we go, in front. Do I panic? Do I reposition? No. I just pull the card down with my left thumb and I'm ready to do the fan. Now it shouldn't happen very often that the card gets crossed up on the right, on top of it like this, because you've got pretty good control if you pay attention to keeping the deck stationary and not moving. You can weave it up or down, by the way. That was down, that was up. You're more likely to get a card snagged up. I'm trying to get one from the right to like that if you do it down to up and up and down, but it really doesn't matter, whichever works. Same thing. You just pull that extra card. You don't have to pull all of them if there's more, just one, and now you're ready to fan again. So that should solve major problems with a giant fan. You're ready to fan like a pressure fan. You make that adjustment so you're ready to weave. A little less than half, weave. You can either do a thumb pressure fan or a giant pressure fan. But notice I didn't have to reposition the cards at all, and that makes for a nice, tidy little quick giant fan. Let's say you are having trouble with the weave. You understand the starting position and no need to readjust the deck and all that, but the act of weaving itself is giving you trouble. You get here and you do this and they don't weave. Well, first of all, you're not trying to mush them into each other. You're trying to cause a card for card weaving, like those poker guys with the poker chips when they take 2 stacks of poker chips and they lift up and they weave together. That's the same type of thing that's going to happen. And in order for it to happen, one card has to start weaving. But that card can't be in the middle. It has to be one of these cards at the bottom or the top of the deck. And once one card starts weaving, the other cards will follow. But all I'm doing is I'm looking at those first cards and I'm trying to get a weave. And I'm going to do that over and over again. And if you were my student and you were right here with me, I wouldn't be trying to teach you to weave them all at once like that, because that's going to happen automatically once you get the first couple cards to weave. So why won't they weave for me? Probably because the halves aren't square at the ends, or if they are square at the ends, they're not being abutted square. So it's one thing to have nice square ends, but if the ends aren't meeting properly, no weave is going to take place. So what I do is I take my index fingers and I keep the deck square. I'll use my pinky for the left hand half, but this right hand half has to have access to the other cards, so you can't keep that there forever. You can keep it there to square it though. So I make my division, I keep everything really square. Maybe I'll touch the right hand packet with my pinky, preparatory, and everything's nice and square. So now what I've got to do is concentrate on those first 2 cards, and I'm trying to get the card from the left in between the cards, the first 2 of the right, or vice versa. At this point it's not as important to have this action where top, bottom, so that you don't have this where a card falls off when you're fanning. You just want to get the weave now. So as long as you can get the first card of one half to go in between the first 2 cards of the other half. See? It happened. It kind of happened just by luck there. And it doesn't matter that the other cards aren't weaving perfectly card for card, but they are starting to weave. And it's a natural phenomenon. But it's not going to happen from the middle of the halves, no matter how hard I try. And I think that might be the number one weave problem right there, is people think of it as somehow an all at once meshing of the cards, and it's not. You've got to get the very first card from one half or the other to go in between the very first card, and and the very next card of the other half. And this is probably what'll happen to you the first times you try. You're going to be hitting it up against each other, and no beveling or meshing is going to happen. So here's a trick to get that meshing to happen. You get everything square, and then you do that. You bevel it. And all that does is make this half a lot more friendly to the weave action. So it kind of gives you a natural spot to initiate your weave. So again, both halves perfectly square. Bevel the left one just a little bit like that. Now I've got kind of a good spot, and for some reason, since they're angled up like that, they tend to start weaving a lot more easier than if we've just got two perfectly square halves. Now I'm used to it, so I kind of compensate, and you can do a little bit of sawing motion, but there's no point in doing any type of sawing or back and forth motion until the weave has started to happen. Now let's say you've tried all these little tips and you're still not getting a weave. You may be one of those people that has to weave from the other end of the deck. So you can do it like this if you want. But I have a friend who always starts from this side. Try it either way. You won't need both, that's for sure, so there's really no good reason to learn it both ways. I've just, from doing it for so long, I can do it both ways, but that's one way to do it. The other way is to start from this end. Now, the advantage of starting from this end is you can use this finger to kind of make this card a little bit farther this way from this card. So in other words, I want this card, this top card, to go between these two first cards to initiate the weave. So what I'm able to do is I use my left index finger to feel, and I can actually feel the edge, or it could even be one or two cards, it doesn't matter. But basically, I'm ensuring that this is the first card that gets woven into. And it's also good because it makes sure that the lower card on this side is in the left hand, because with this situation it'll fall off, and I think we've gone over the ways to adjust that. So you do the weave, you pull it back, and you're ready to fan. So worst case scenario with a usable weave would be that both cards are like that. Again, adjust and adjust, and that really doesn't matter. If it gets the back card of the fan, it won't be seen. If it is, I mean, you've got a little more latitude than what I showed you, but it only takes a few seconds to do that, or really less than a few seconds. So I'm trying to do it in real time with both cards being on the top and bottom halves. I'll do it with a real huge right hand half. So there's my action of pulling, and then I can do the fan, which is hideous because I made one end really small and one end really big. So there's all your weave options. Remember, you can start it from here, and that's the way I learned it, so I'm just used to it. If you want a little extra help, you can start it from here, from the other side, because you can use your left index finger to help you out. If you have trouble just initiating a weave, this will solve many people's problems. Just that right there has gotten a lot of people that I've known that have had trouble with a weave to get their first weave. And again, once you get one card to weave, they're pretty much all going to follow. Now that's another little problem there, is when I'll try to get that to happen again. There we go. See that big block? That was caused by one thing and one thing only. That was caused by me angling one of the packs this way while I was weaving it. If you do that, you're going to get big clumps, and what you tend to do is you do that inadvertently, and then you correct and you push the deck back. So see how I've developed my nice big clump there? That's not going to be a nice giant fan, because it's going to, it's disruptive to have that many cards in a cluster like that. So the reason that happened, again, was because instead of keeping the two halves abutted against each other during the weave, I at one point angled the packs like that during the weave. And what that allowed to do was a bunch of cards run by without having another card weave into it. That's a lot of stuff about the weave. If that doesn't carry your weave, maybe you need to just quit. We've gone over the weave. We know that it's essential to start with the deck in dealing position and make your little adjustment here. So maybe you have your thumb here to begin with, but you put the index finger underneath, and now the deck is nice and square and boxed, ready for me to divide and weave it. That's what we're going to do, divide and weave it. Now we've got a double pack ready for the fanning itself. Now there's a couple ways to do the fanning. One is the thumb fan, and all you're going to do is do a regular thumb fan, just like we've done. This isn't good, we'll talk about that in a second. But with a two-tiered fan. So you've woven the pack, and you're going to do everything that you would with a normal thumb fan. Let's see if I can't get a nicer weave. Now suppose this happens in real life. You're doing your routine, you do a weave, and the weave's not that great, and there's some gaps or something wrong. Don't do your giant fans right then. Do something else. Do a giant arm spread to get rid of the bad weave. When you're not committed, nobody knows what you're going to do. So back to the formation of the fan. Everything holds parallel like with all our other fans. We do the cocking or tilting toward the thumb to get a wider fan, and then we only contact the lower tier with the thumb. So just think of it as a normal thumb fan that you're doing, with these extra cards sticking out. Never do this. That's death, because it'll tend to separate the cards like that. Never fan both at once. I mean, you're trying to, you're kind of pretending, and you may feel that you're contacting up there, but it's not doing you any good. All you need to do is do a regular thumb fan with the lower half of the deck, and that's the mechanics of the giant fan. Now to do a pressure fan, a giant pressure fan, which is my favorite way of doing a giant fan, for one thing, your hands are going to have to be at least this long. I mean, if they're real short, you might not be able to get your fingers over the deck. But notice the perfect weave, card for card. Gotta love that. And it's already in position for fanning. And this time I'm going to use the pressure method. Now I can't pressure this part because I can't get my fingers around it. But the great thing about the pressure method of fanning is it's friendly to a woven deck. So you actually do a pressure fan as if you were using, say, jumbo cards, or a long deck of cards. Watch how my thumb is way down here, just like it would be if it was a normal sized deck that hasn't been woven, and my fingers are at the edge, just like with a normal pressure fan. And I do the subtle things that we've gone over, where I put the deck to the left, make the pressure fan, maybe make it wider with some adjustments from behind or with the thumb. But it's just a regular pressure fan. Everything's the same. Starts off parallel, but with a giant deck or a woven deck to make the giant fan. You've got the deck woven, parallel, cock the deck, move it over and spread. Now, when I'm doing giant fans, I'm often standing up, and gravity will help as far as distributing the fan toward this part of your hand. So normally this is how you'll be holding a fan, with that being the floor, so that direction's up. And it's just natural for the fan to open up and be wide. It's a heavy fan. Now, the things that are bad that can happen to a giant fan, besides starting off with a bad weave, which you don't have to go with. I mean, you make your weave and it's just untenable for some reason. There's other things that you can do and end up like that or what have you, and then do the giant fan later. But the biggest problem that people have with giant fans is cards falling out of the upper tier. And this is for one main reason, is they just don't push the cards in far enough. So you've got a situation where there's not a whole lot of cards holding these upper cards. So you want to push the cards in considerably before the formation of the giant fan. And you don't want to go too far, it'll make a small fan, although that's still not a terrible fan, and it's preferable to dropping the cards. So just make sure you've got the deck in enough, and the cards probably won't fall out. However, if they do, it's going to be from right here, and it's going to be when you're holding the deck up so that that's up. And this is just the weakest part of a giant fan by nature. It's where the cards are most likely to fall out. So just be aware of that, and something that I'll do if it's very important that no cards fall, I'll make my giant fan and just kind of aid it like that. Doesn't look bad, it doesn't look like there's anything special going on, but now I've got the world's most secure giant fan. They can still see the fan. It's not important that I'm holding it only with one hand, and I'm not worried about anything bad happening. Now with a decent stable giant fan, you can do all the normal fan tricks of twirling and that sort of thing. So if you got your giant fan made and pushed in enough, and there's fanning powder, you'll be able to do things like a giant twirl or a one-hand close. Again, watch on the one-hand close though, because that's putting a lot of pressure on this really weak part of the fan. So you're doing a one-hand close, you do this, and sure enough, a card will fly out. So when you're doing your one-hand close, what I usually do is I'll make a fan, and then the very final fan I make before a one-hand close is I just push it in a little bit more. And since you do want to do a one-hand close without the aid of the other hand, you can do your close, and there's little danger of a card falling out. Let's say I'm doing this kind of manipulation. I need this kind of fan. Why? Because when you're producing cards, pulling them from a palm position or what have you, you don't have time to get into the parallel position for a nice one-hand fan. So you make do, and you put the thumb on that corner every time, and you're going to be able to do a decent fan, no matter where you're starting from. So let's say I'm going to produce a packet of cards. I palm them off, and then I do my fan. And what's happening is I'm going from the palm position to the position where my thumb is on that crucial lower left corner in this position, although it'll move around as your hand moves around. But it's not the pip corner, it's the blank corner. If your thumb is there, you're going to be able to do decent, we call these manipulation or production fans. And they're the fans you're going to do when speed is of the essence and you're producing cards, and it's not quite as important to have a perfectly round fan.
Do you hate the lapel spread? I do. I don't like how it bends the cards. Ugh!
Some people like the spread, but here's a better way. It'll also teach you a lot about beveling. And I've been telling you that fanning is just beveling the cards in a circle. But let's say you do the same beveling, but you don't do it in such a circle. Your goal is to bevel the cards out in as straight a line as possible. That's already more distance than most people are going to get on the lapel spread. It doesn't bend the cards. It teaches you a lot about fanning. It tells you the condition of the deck, so if there's any breaks or anything like that. If it doesn't fan nice and smooth, then you know that there's some problems with the deck. Lapel spread doesn't do anything but bend and ruin the cards.
Damn you, LaPaul!
Since I'm not that fond of the LaPaul spread, I came up with this alternative that doesn't involve bending the cards. And that bothers me, particularly if you were to do a lot of LaPaul spreads. You'd end up with a deck that's bowed, and it'd make you very, very angry. Very angry. Extremely! The alternative to the LaPaul spread. Very nice, doesn't involve destroying the cards. And the bonus is it tells you a lot about deck condition, and it teaches you a lot about beveling the deck as a unit. So, what you're going to do is going to have the deck in dealing position, and you're going to box it like this and immediately bevel with one hand. And this is a great skill to develop. You'd be surprised about how many people you could ask to do this, and they'd be hard-pressed to do it, no matter how long they've been handling the cards. And it's because it's something special to XCM, treating the whole deck as a unit and beveling it all at once. Now to apply this to my substitute for the LaPaul spread, I'm going to start that beveling with the left hand, so you box and you bevel, and then I'm going to take my right thumb and draw the whole deck out as far as I can. And what's supporting it is the right fingers and back. I'll show you that from behind. You get a nice long spread without having to do any of this, the bending part. And if somebody tells you they like the sound of the LaPaul spread, they need therapy, because the LaPaul spread does not sound that great. So for my money, you start beveling, you draw the deck as far as you can straight out, and you've got really two pieces of it if you were to separate it, because this is about as much as you can hold here, and this is about as much as you can hold here. A variation is to start like this, so that you can get even more distance with the left hand. For my money, I'll take this over the LaPaul spread because it doesn't harm the cards. It's more reliable, and it's taught me a lot about beveling the deck as a unit. And I don't think there's anything else useful out of this concept.
Hi, my name is Q. Really excited about this opportunity to learn some new skills. Really excited about working with the Super Hands folks, and I'm ready to get started. My background is the martial arts. I really enjoy the physical and the mental aspect of it. When I ran into the Super Hands team, they really impressed me with their level of dedication to the art, and it's something that I think I can learn from, and I'm really interested in the challenge of it all. So we'll see where I am a couple weeks from now after working with these obvious pros, and we'll see if maybe I can add a little bit more to my repertoire. See that? You guys ever watched the movie X-Men? You heard of Gambit? I'll cut you with this card. In terms of cards, these are my kind of cards. You don't know anything about it, this will cut you. I have a few fears. You know, I'm a confident person. I know that I can, whatever I set my mind to, I can do it. But at the same time, these moves are pretty daunting. So if I can get 2 or 3 of them, if I can get 1 of them, that'll be good. I like to play cards. I have a few games that I like. I like Tunk, I like 500, Spades, Bid Whist, Poker, Texas Hold'em. Play all those games. Blackjack, sure. I'll play the games, but when it comes to fans, cuts, all those different types of manipulations and all that stuff, it's all brand new to me. I'm going to show you guys out there my level of skill. So, here we go. I need a table. Okay, let's just cut there. I know you're sitting at home thinking this guy really bites, and that's probably true. In terms of cards, I'm an extreme novice, so we'll see what these guys, the challenge, I'm gonna put the challenge out there to Jerry and DeVoe. Teach me how to do a fan. Teach me extreme card manipulation. Because if I can learn it, anybody can. Good luck. Hey, what's up? This is Q. We're about to meet Jerry. We're at his house now. So, without further ado, let's go meet him. Okay, so we arrived at Jerry's house and went straight, went up to meet him. We went up to the card room where, he's got his card memorabilia and encyclopedias, a lot of history of, just card stuff. He's just got a lot of information up there. He's very impressed. Showed me some things. He almost kicked the out of me. It was a pretty impressive move. Nice crescent kick, inside, outside.
Well, here's some card basics. First thing is kinds of cards. Bicycles are relatively common. You might have seen them playing poker or what have you. They're a nice card. I particularly like them for practice. Don't use them so much for performance. I'll explain that a little later. These are the primo cards. These are called tally-hos, and they're more expensive. They're generally run about twice as much as the bicycles, but they're much nicer cards for a number of reasons. The first is the back design. The back design is one of the prettiest that you can ever find. So you've got all these nice circles that multiply when you do a giant fan, same with other fans, and same with cuts. If you do a multiple cut where there's lots of packets, all those circles multiplying give kind of a neat effect. Bicycles go, like I said, they're good practice cards. The reason they're not as good as tally-hos is they can hold crimps easier. So if you get a bend in a card, it's going to stay longer in the bikes no matter what you do with it. You'll try to unbend it, and eventually it'll be okay. But with a tally-ho, not only does it not crimp as easily, but if you do crimp it, it'll come back to life better. The other thing is these just have a better finish than the bicycles. These have, I think, maybe a more deeper linen, type finish, more little pits to hold powder and the like. But you can use either one, and like I said, if I were you, I'd use these for practice and use these for performance, because these are nice cards and people like to see them. Next thing, actually the first thing that I do with cards, not everybody does this, but I do it, is to powder them. And the reason for that is they feel kind of slick if you want to check them out there. Now, that's okay, that's okay for playing cards or for dealing, what have you, but this is what they should feel like, and you'll probably be able to feel the difference right away. Those already tend to stick together, and they just feel smoother. You can probably feel that. So to make these feel like that, what we're going to do is powder them. You just get a paper bag and some powder. You don't need too much, about a couple of shakes like that. You shake it around. And you should let it settle for a couple minutes, because otherwise there's deadly powder. It'll just come wafting out. It only takes 2 parts per million to kill this whole city. So then you let the powder settle, and you're going to have powdery cards. And you're going to try to distribute the powder a little more. We'll put all the cards the same way. And what you do to distribute them is you do some shuffles, and it could be any old shuffles. And all it does is kind of scrape the cards together, and that distributes the powder a little bit. And you can also slap the deck like that. You can see powder coming out, a little powder coming out. But once that powder's on there and distributed, you have a nice, kind of smooth, much nicer, smoother working deck, which will be one that you can learn fans on.
Okay, so then we got into the different moves that he was going to teach me, and I think we went straight into the Charlier, and I had a bit of a hard time with keeping the top card straight.
I'm having a hard time keeping this top part, part from slipping around. Yeah.
Okay. What you can do is actually lean it against it. So
lean it here.
Yeah. So see that this whole packet, this whole half is on top of that. It's like a T.
Okay. So I'm leaning.
Yeah. See? Yeah. You can. Yeah.
It was really cool working with one hand. Started off with one hand, moved on to doing the cross hands, and I actually got a little routine in there. I got the division in there, and then the special close. So it's almost like a routine right there with just working with the Charlier. So that was pretty cool too. I had a really hard time with the fan. Just getting the cards into that nice, even spread. Another good tip that he gave me was to bevel the cards, start on a table, and practice beveling that way.
This is something a lot of beginners learn to do, and this will help you on your fan if you take the deck and try to spread it with your thumb.
Like I said, it was kind of difficult for me to learn that fan. I would say that's the hardest move out there, that I learned. So, you know, just to start on the table, you know, bevel there. Also, if there's like there's a break in the fan, it's usually going to be started by like an oily card. So what you want to do is just cut there at that card, put that card at the end, and then start your fan again. And that usually works. The table cut was pretty easy, actually. You know, that's pretty straightforward. Very impressive if you can get it down. So I'm definitely going to keep that in my repertoire. But yeah, that was I would say the easiest maneuver that he taught me. On the arm spread, it was kind of tough. I was rushing it a bit. I had a hard time getting to all the cards.
Do anything? Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool too.
One good tip that Jared gave me was to lay my arm flat out on the table, you know, to kind of get used to having my arm flat out like that. And doing it that way, I think gave me a better spread and gave me a better chance to get that good catch.
It's going to be like in the seat. Oh, yes, that was so close. One card, dude. Yeah.
Patience is the key. I was, you know, really trying to rush that catch there. But, you know, Jerry gave me some tips in terms of just, you know, sending the card straight up, following through all the way down, and really kind of picked up on that. I'm usually kind of self-conscious about my scar. I didn't even think about it until I was actually on camera.
This is something I've just never told anybody. You might have to roll your sleeve up.
That's my scar.
Not all the time. That's cool.
Yeah.
Check out the scar. I've got some fake scars in the closet. So anyhow,
Jerry liked it a lot. And it kind of threw me off because usually children running high, but he really liked it and kind of, you know, asked me to give him one. I passed on that, but, you know, told him the story about how I got it, and he was pretty impressed. I saved some kids, and you know, a pregnant woman was a burning fire, and, you know, I was the hero that day. So then we started throwing cards, and I don't know, but Jared really gets off on the throwing cards. He was saying something like, "You think you got a scar now?" or something like that. But I really picked him off when I threw a card, and it stuck right on his picture.
I don't know how that happened,
That's
but
sweet.
that is sweet. I think you should just leave it there,
I will.
so you never forget.
I throw it so hard it breaks the corner.
Yeah, he could not get it off as much as he tried. So
It's up there pretty good, man.
Die!
Yes.
I was pretty proud of myself on that one. There was also a time where I think somebody threw a card and cracked the camera in half.
Oh yeah.
I remember that happening. So, you know, the danger of the throwing cards, you know, really, it keeps me focused on what I'm doing, because I know at any moment, you know, if I'm not doing the right thing, you know, I could slip and catch a card to the middle of the head.
This is after my first week of training.
Let's see the fan. Here's where I'm at with the table cut. very proud of my arm spread, so watch out. Right before we started filming on week 2, DeVoe gave me a call and asked me how I was doing on the moves. I told him I was doing pretty good, and he was like, good, because you're going to be performing this weekend. I'm like, what? I went there, I showed a few little moves that I knew. He did a couple performances and told me that we'd hook up again around week 4. For those of you that don't know, casino night is when a corporation basically holds a mock casino. There's no real money involved. It's for entertainment purposes only, and there's a lot of prizes given away, things like that. Now, for you extreme card manipulators, a good kind of secret of the trade is casino nights. There's a lot of money to be made in casino nights, not only as a performer, but also as a special guest, or you could even have your own extreme card manipulation table. Now, these things would never go on a real casino, but because it's for entertainment purposes only, you could do a lot of fancy moves and people will really enjoy it. Alright, I just got finished learning some moves with DeVoe, and I feel really good this week. I feel like there were a lot of things that I was really shaky on that first week, but this time I'm geared up. I'm ready to go. It kind of surprised me. I thought I was going to learn 2 or 3 moves there, but I ended up learning about 6 or 7, and they were great moves. Just really awesome moves. My favorite is the one-handed bridge shuffle. Took me a while to get it, and I'm still working on it, but I'm getting to the point where I can get it done, and it's a sweet move. Other than that, some different type of moves, but that's the one I'm looking for. The one-handed shuffle was by far the toughest move that I learned this set. I had a lot of problems with this move.
They want to go, man. I'm telling you, they want to go right into...
First of all, I wasn't placing my thumb high enough up on the deck.
Wow, I can't come up because this thumb's got to be there.
Then I wasn't gripping the, for lack of a better term, thumb pack enough, so I was dropping cards. I wasn't using my pinky to provide the pressure for the, for lack of a better term, pinky pack. I was dropping the cards so much, DeVoe didn't even get a chance to tell me until maybe the 10th or 15th try that I've got to get the thumb pack card, the top card on the thumb packet, over the pinky packet to make sure that I get a good bridge. I've got to keep the cards concave. There's a lot to this move. I'm getting it though, and that's the fun part. Anytime I get it, I'm like, yes, you know, all of these things are coming together. A lot of super tips, a lot of hard work, a lot of mess ups, but basically just sticking to the procedures. Thumb high, pressure on the thumb, pressing through with the index finger and touching that second pack, that pinky pack, only with the nail of the index finger. Keeping the pressure with the pinky. Making sure those cards are concave, turning it over, keeping it even, and then letting them rip. That's the one-handed shuffle. The flip back is a really cool move. it's one of those moves that really impressed me when I saw it as part of DeVoe's routine. So when he showed it to me and how to actually do it, I felt really good. I was like, yeah, you know, I got it. The hard part for me was to actually get the deck off of the palm of my hand and then to switch it over to between my thumb and my pinky. But once I got that part down, the flip back was right as pie. The flick and pop is another one of those moves that's not too fancy to use at a card table. You know, it's impressive, but it's something that you just pop that card box out, flick it, pop it up, pull them out, show them you mean business. The one thing that you want to do just to prep, make sure you're cutting the side tabs off of the box. Prep that top flap a little bit there, and don't squeeze too hard on the box. Squeeze a little bit on the sides, flick it up, not too hard, but flick it up, grip, reach in and grab, you're there. The first time I did it, I threw it kind of hard and the cards ended up getting stuck in the ceiling, and the next time I tossed them out the window. So you really want to keep the cards in the box at the most part, because otherwise it's just going to be a tough cleanup. The swing cut. The swing cut was easy. The one tip that DeVoe gave me was to make sure that I lift the packet up before swinging it over to make sure that I get good separation between the packets. The G-force is a full body move, and it's a variation of the flip back. So once I got the flip back, it wasn't hard for me to kind of upgrade to that G-force move. The one tip that DeVoe gave me though was to keep the cards level all the way around and then bring them up, keeping them level. That kept me from my tendency, which was to kind of flip the cards back and forth over, up and down. Keeping it level, you know, just gives a better presentation, and it's a really fun move. The pivot cut. The pivot cut was actually the first move that DeVoe showed me, and it's a really cool move. It's one of those moves that you could actually use at a poker game and not really think much about it. It's not that flashy, but at the same time, it's a good move. The tips that DeVoe gave me were to bevel the cards to make it easier to peel a packet off. Also, to toss the cards onto the deck instead of just placing them on the top of the deck. To go ahead and toss the cards right onto the top makes it look more natural. The turnover is actually a variation of the swing cut with the added flair of flipping the top packet onto the deck. Oh wow, I didn't see that. How are you dropping it? DeVoe's tip for me on the turnover was to actually turn the hand over to make sure that the first packet gets into the hand, and then not to turn the hand over when I'm flipping the top packet onto the deck. Don't turn your hand over on the second packet. Just use your ring finger to trip it to make sure that it flips down onto the deck. I'm at the end of week 2. Here's where I'm at with the flip back. Here's where I'm at with the G-force. Here's where I'm at with the swing cut. here's where I'm at with the one-handed shuffle. Here's where I'm at with the turnover. So this is my final trip to Jerry's, and things went a little bit different than the way I expected them to be. When I got there, we went straight up to the card room, and we were just loosening up, getting ready for filming. And I threw a kick out at the camera, and then Jerry threw a kick kind of towards me. So kind of jokingly, I got down in a little stance, and we ended up throwing some no contact, doing some no contact sparring, just trading kicks, showing different things, and it just turned into an all-out sparring session, and it was great. It was a really good time. So, you know, me and Jerry kind of mixed it up a little bit. Ended up just going at it. I started out with closed fist, just kind of a ready defensive posture, but ready. And Jerry started talking to me about open hands, and I love open hand sparring. So we got into it.
Whoa, yeah, come on. No, I still haven't learned any moves yet, but I'm getting a workout.
So I learned 4 moves. 2 of them were pretty easy, 2 of them were very difficult. The first move that we went over was the deck twirl, and it's a pretty easy, it's a simple move, but once you get into it, it becomes a little bit more difficult to keep the twirl going. The main thing to remember is to make sure you're placing the deck on the thumb to get a good start on that twirl. The next move that we went over was the one-handed scissor cut. And this was another pretty simple move. I almost nailed it on the first try, and I definitely got it on the second one. It was difficult for me to do the cut with 2 hands simultaneously.
How am I holding? Am I holding it right? Like that?
Yep, index finger.
Not right.
Those cards aren't necessary.
So I know I need to work on getting it with 1 hand and then transferring it over, or kind of spreading out to doing 2 hands. The next move we went into was the twin fans. Jerry started off with an introduction and then went into a demonstration of the twin fans.
Cool basic thing to have. You got a lot for your money there. It's called twin fans. And it's another one of those things that looks harder than it really is.
He said that it looks harder than it really is. Maybe for him.
That number you're going.
This is a really tough move. The first tip he gave me was to make sure that when I'm spreading the cards, to use the index finger to pull the spread down to make the fan round.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to start. Yeah.
See,
That's
now
cool.
look, watch them scoot over. You see them scooting over like that?
Awesome. That's what they're supposed to do.
Oh, are they?
Yep. And then to make it round, you're just going to pull in with your index finger.
Pull in with the index?
Yeah, so you do it like this, and then you come and you walk them over with your index finger.
The next tip was to place my hand on the table and apply pressure with my thumb so that I could get a good pivot point for the fan.
Now put your hand on the table, and this allows you to keep all the pressure under control, because what a lot of people do is their hand starts walking around, but you're going to keep your hand perfectly still on the table. Press down with your thumb quite a bit, and then do the same thing where you open up. Yeah, much better.
There was a point where I really thought I was not gonna get this move, and Jerry just calmed me down and gave me some really down-to-earth advice.
I think it's just a matter of practice, really.
You think?
Yeah, because
The more I practice, I'll get a feel for it.
it took me a long time to get that smooth. I mean, not a long time, but certainly a couple of weeks.
I hope you're right. I hope it's just practice, because I'd like to get that fan.
I had trouble finding the pivot point. So what Jerry told me to do was just take 2 cards and spread them out 180 degrees.
Because if you did that and you had a full deck, you'd automatically have good fans. Do you want to try it with 2 cards just to see if that's possible? Are you serious? Yeah.
At first I thought he was kidding. I'm like, you want me to just do a fan with 2 cards? My fans just really started coming out so well after using that tip of just pivoting 2 cards. Somehow mentally I was able to grasp the notion that I've got to use those fingers to spread that whole fan out. And like I said, it just started coming out for me. The last move was the spring, which is a really cool move and one that I was really looking forward to learning. So Jerry started off by showing me a few different springs.
Wow.
I dropped a lot of cards. On my first few attempts, I was using my stomach to help to catch the cards. And Jerry said that was completely natural and that he learned that way as well. But what he told me was to use my pinky instead so that I could get my springs further away from my body. And that was a really good tip.
And now how are you keeping them from flying around as they are at the end there, to just go right into the crook of the hand there?
I pretend my pinky is my belly, so rather than that, I keep my pinky pointed straight up, and they actually jog against it.
Yeah, but oh wow.
So you have to put your pinky way back here.
Where's the pinky? Oh, so you're turning around this way?
Yeah,
Like that?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that way, it goes against
Oh, it
it.
sure is.
I was trying to open my springs up and really extend it out, and the cards were just going everywhere.
Before you know it, you'll have a 2 foot long spring. But it does not happen, quickly, unfortunately. I've never seen anybody do it just perfect the very first time.
So Jerry just kind of reminded me to make sure that I got a good feel for the cards and good control over the spring before I really tried to open it up. The main thing to remember about the spring is to keep it slow and steady.
Yeah, that was real nice and slow.
It looks better and you can do more things with it, such as going over your head or even doing a pirouette. All that constant springing was hard on my hands.
That's tough on the hand too.
Sure is. My hand gets cramped.
I was trying to show Jerry that my thumb was hurting, so I was making a joke that, oh, my thumb's hanging off, it's hanging off. And so once he figured out that I was just kidding, he started pulling his thumb off, and then next thing I know, he's banging on his finger with a mallet.
Got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is the pinky on my left hand was injured in a freak mallet accident.
And then it got really crazy. Jerry went into his closet, pulled out some scars that looked like bacon.
Somebody cut me. It's like,
That's not funny.
they cut me again.
And it just went downhill from there.
This is the one-handed scissor cut.
That's a twirling. I will now attempt the spring. Twin fans is pretty tough. I think I got it with the left hand, but my right hand's still catching up. So let's give it a try. So since we didn't get a chance to hang out after week 2, DeVoe promised me that in week 4 we would hang out and he'd come and pick me up. Hey, I'm waiting for DeVoe. He told me to be ready for a big surprise, so I'm kind of on edge, but we'll see what's up.
Oh, this has got to be him. Oh, it's on.
Stretch Hummer, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. Yo, what's up? That's how it's supposed to feel. So as you can see, we had a great time. That night was the perfect cap to 4 weeks of hard work on this Super Hands project. And DeVoe even threw in a ring, card, and coin manipulation performance. It was awesome. After all of that, we got ready the next day for the final 4 moves. This week, I learned 4 moves from DeVoe. We did a wind elemental, a display, a close for the display, and a card spin. DeVoe spent a lot of time with me on the vertical spin. I was having a hard time of putting enough pressure, first of all, with the middle finger. I've got to put a lot of pressure upward with that. You also have to press down with as much of the ring finger as you can get over the deck. Keeping in mind that you're keeping the pressure there with your thumb and then spinning it out. You should get a pretty good spin there. The finger spin is a wind elemental, and that's something that the pros use to get their creative juices flowing. Just basically, if you're kind of in a rut, it may help to pull out a fan and just make some things happen. It's also good for spectators because they can do the same thing, just kind of make their own wind elemental moves. The finger spin in particular is a really cool move. Once you get your positioning, the wind takes over and you're able to get a good spin on there. It takes a while to find that sweet spot, but once you find it, you can just go there for days. The tip on the finger spin is to actually use the nail of the finger, press it to the center of the card, and let her rip. Now, it's only going to work if you hit the center of the card and you're using your nail. So if you don't have much nail, turn the finger over so you can use the back of the nail to get that good angle on. To prove that the wind elementals are good for creativity, DeVoe and I tried some different spinning surfaces. DeVoe used his heel, his toe. I used my nose, my glasses, my ear. We used Gene Simmons' tongue. Then DeVoe pulled out a big knife, and that's when I ran. Because I'm here to learn card manipulation, not get cut. The flash dry is a very fun move. It's just nice, it's big, it's flashy, and it's also versatile. You start it off with the dealer's grip, and you can go right into other moves like the Charlier. So it's a really cool move. I'm glad I've got it. The tip on the flash dry is to go big. Just extend it way out there, get all that extension, and bring it right back in. It's gonna look good. The impossible stack close from the flash dry open is a tough maneuver. It's tough on the hands. So through repetition, you're able to kind of build up that finger strength that you're going to need to grip the cards in the right way to open up that stack. The key to the impossible stack is to keep the hands close. So you go big on that big flash dry, but then you're going to close down, keep the hands close while you're maneuvering the cards through the impossible stack. I was dropping a lot of cards on the impossible stack. So there's a couple tips that should help you to not do that. Basically what you want to do is start off with smaller packets on top because those are easier for you to maneuver. Also, just remember that through repetition, you'll get the finger strength that you'll need to hold those cards in place. And now for the vertical spin. And now for the flash dry. So here's the finger spin. Flash dry with the impossible stack. Bam. Rah. Okay, I have no grip, but I'm going to power through. Power. Oh! As a graduation gift, the Super Hands team presented me with some really cool gifts that's going to help me in my extreme card manipulation future. First of all, Jerry the Flourish Man presented me with an autographed copy of the Encyclopedia of Playing Card Flourishes, which is a 500+ book. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. Filled with card manipulations. Look at it. It's huge. Then I got from DeVoe 2 autographed copies of one of his Cobra collection, which is the hardest cut I've ever seen, and it's the world's hardest cut. And then also his Cradle to Grave, which is just full of hardcore underground material. Of course, I got an XCM box to place all my cards in, carry them around, make sure they don't get bent up, tattered, or torn. So now I'm done with the Extreme Beginners DVD. It was a long, arduous journey, but it was definitely worth it. I enjoyed myself immensely. First of all, I'd like to thank the Super Hands folks for choosing me to follow around these last 4 weeks. I learned a lot, and hopefully you folks at home learned a lot as well. I'd like to send a shout out to the GPT boys, the Biloxi boys, and all my folks back home. Peace. There's a lot of different ways that you can work on it. Different finger fitness drills you can use. Chinese balls.
Oh, did you catch that on film? No. Oh, I didn't really spit on the sidewalk. I really spit on. Hey, watch your step. All right.
So Kenny was mouthing off to him one day in the cafeteria, and I was just like, you know, nobody talks to Chef like that, and I threw some mashed potatoes in his face. And he got all crazy, and, you know, he tried to wipe the mashed potatoes out of his face, but before he got there, boom, right in the nose, man. It was all downhill from there. He slid on some cream peas. That's digital, man. I like that. I just feel funny looking into the camera sometimes. Okay. Because there's nobody there, man. I swear, it's just this hole. Why aren't you responding to me? Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you give me something? Give me something to work with. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? This is my simulated version of a deck twirl. I can't say that. I can't say that. I'm a martial artist. You know, that's my background. I can break boards and hands with these bricks. I can't break hands with bricks. And I can break hands with hands. You know, I'm deadly serious, buddy. You come approach me on the street and you might not leave the way you came. But the impossible stack clothes from the flash dry is absolutely impossible. So if you can do this, please write to this address. Okay, so we arrived at Jerry's house and went straight, you know, went up to meet him. The funny thing about Jerry, you know, that I didn't realize is, you know, he has no hands. He doesn't have any lips either, so that kind of threw me for a loop there. The guy's got hooks, you know, hooks for hands, and just really kind of impressed me the amount of skill that he can possess with just hooks. Purple dragons perched on the patio. Purple dragons perched on the patio. Little elves live on the shelves.
This is the vote. This is the vote. That's it.
Like I said, at the end of this session, you're not really gonna mess with me because my head's gonna be in the clouds. I'll be dropping down bombs on you. Like Raiden.
I was dead serious, dude. You laughing, I was dead serious.
I'll be dropping down from the sky.
Fear my power.
We did a wind elemental, a 4-card display, a pack of bubble gum with some bottle caps, and DeVoe DeVoe even throwed in. Damn.
What kind of English is that?
Throwed in. He throwed it in. DeVoe even throwed in. Threw in. Damn. Oh, gee. Here's where I'm at with the turnover. Apple turnovers. Delicious. Really great. Woo! First of all, stop! Plus this cool XEM box.